Welcome to Moments with Art, the podcast that shares inspiring stories of successful individuals and organizations from around the world. In this episode, we sit down with Larry Allen, Director of Student Conduct at the State University of New York, to discuss mental wellness within the college community, finding things that help you relax, the role of sports in mental wellness, and Larry's past experiences as a college lacrosse coach and young athlete. Enjoy the episode. Hi, Larry. Welcome to Art and Moments with Art podcast. On behalf of the whole Art team, we're so excited and grateful to have you here. Welcome.
Thank you very much for having me. This is fantastic. Excited.
Yeah, I'm really excited for today. So I'll get us started off with the light questions. Tell us a little bit about your educational and professional background, just a little bit about you.
Sure. Well, try to be as concise as possible. I'm not really good at that. But so I started pursuing college just because everybody else was, and my parents were like, you're going to college, and that's that. I really had no idea what I wanted to do. Senior year of high school, we fundraised for our class, our French 4 class, to go to France for a couple weeks in an exchange program. And I've always loved different languages and learning languages and different cultures. So I thought, wow, this is pretty cool. I could maybe major in French in college and then be a French teacher and go to France every year. But after 2 years of pursuing that at college, I realized that's not what I wanted to do at all. But I wanted to help people and work with people. And I'd started working in an Upward Bound program at St. Lawrence University when I was home in the summers. And that was working with high school students and helping them position themselves for a successful college career. And so I started pursuing psychology with the intent of being a counselor at some point. And then I was at Moyne College in Syracuse, New York. Why I ended up there was because I was recruited to play lacrosse there, Division II lacrosse. And that was a great experience. And from there, I decided I wanted to pursue counseling, master's in counseling. So the only place that was close to where I grew up, which is Potsdam, New York. Although there's 4 colleges within 10 miles, only one of those schools had a counseling program. And I think the next closest might have been Plattsburgh, but even though where I'm from is 2 hours west of here, most people really don't ever think of going east for college. Everybody goes south. So Plattsburgh wasn't even on my radar for that. But I went to St. Lawrence University and got my degree in counseling and human development with the intent of being a marriage counselor. But when I graduated, I was like 22 years old or so, probably looked about 18, single. I thought no one's going to take me seriously as a marriage counselor at this point in my life. So I need to get more, credibility. And so in the meantime, I'll take a hall director position at SUNY Canton. That was like back in 2001. And when I started doing that, I fell in love with higher education and working with college students. And so I never left. I thought I was going to higher ed to kill some time before I went into marriage counseling. And I think I've probably done some sort of group and even relationship counseling in my tenure here in higher ed. But since then, I've been a higher educational professional, and I started in housing and residence life. I've worked at orientation office, student activities office, athletics. Since coming here to Plattsburgh, it was looking for something that paired student conduct and orientation, which is a very unlikely pairing.
Yeah.
But Plattsburgh had a position that was exactly that. And so upon interviewing for that position here, I fell in love with the campus and the people I'd be working with and the students. So yeah, in 2007, I ended up at Plattsburgh. And I've been here ever since, doing conduct and orientation. And now I'm back in housing and community living here, but still doing conduct as well. And yeah, just keep growing. I've also coached here. I coached here for about 9 years. So yeah, I just stay engaged with the students as much as I can and find ways to have fun helping them succeed.
That's awesome. And I hear the next semester is looking a little different for you from the previous semesters. Tell us a little bit about
Sure. So as I mentioned earlier, my first probably 6 or so years here, I was either co-director or director of the new student orientation program here. And then that was redirected to the student activities and Center for Student Involvement, and that's where it's been for a long time. But that is coming back to me, and now that and that's kind of part of a new partnership that was created last spring, which you are familiar with, where Student Conduct Office partnered with and has physically relocated to the Housing and Community Living Office, where we now reside. Here we are.
Yep, there you are.
And so I'm very much interwoven into community living now. I supervise 3 of the 6 hall directors. And I'll be doing that again next year. But we are getting orientation back. And so me, the 2 first-year program hall directors, and a sophomore, we created a sophomore-focused hall director. The 4 of us are building over the course of this year what's called SOAR, Student Onboarding and Retention Program, and that is focused on first and second year students. I think second year students many times in many institutions kind of fall to the wayside a little bit. There's so much attention placed on getting first year students acclimated and in and successful, and we focus a lot on students graduating, getting them placed where they want to be. And so we have identified that sophomores are a place that we need to put more time and effort into providing specific function or programming opportunities and skill development for them. And
I love hearing that, honestly. Like that's really awesome. And it just looks at a group of, students that absolutely, like you said, like they're not quite freshmen, so everyone's not paying attention to them, but still need like a lot of support and guidance. I'm really glad that you guys are doing that. All right, well, I'll move into some of our burning questions here. So mental wellness is an important topic in today's world, and even more so in college students. How has the COVID-19 pandemic affected the mental health of students on campus in terms of isolation, disconnection from their peers and classes, and yeah?
Well, I think you touched on it. I think it's the isolation component, and I think over that period of time, we went from being a very social people, not everybody, but generally speaking, and societally speaking, and just interaction, physical interaction and social interaction. And so I think over the course of that time, we all had to learn to be more comfortable and okay with isolation. And I think that's going to have long-lasting impacts on all of us. And so I think especially with students who are younger, people who are younger as part of their developmental process, we're finding even now with our student leaders, our CAs, a lot of our student leaders on campus, things that were kind of par for the course and what they did as community builders in the residence halls, that they themselves are even apprehensive to do. So we do a thing each semester 3 times called a census. We're trying to find out who's here, make sure everybody's in the right place. And CAs are apprehensive to go knock on the residents' doors and just talk with the residents because it's so much out of their comfort zone after a few years. And on the flip side of that, students who are in their rooms really don't want people coming to their space.
Yeah.
And so it makes it kind of an awkward situation that neither party really wants to engage in, but in some ways, from the housing side of things, it's needed because we need to find out who's here. And on just the developmental side of things, we're trying to create community, but there is this kind of elephant in the room that we need to identify and work through to help rebuild and a sense of community to the extent that is wanted. So that's something we're asking ourselves, like, the former or historical model within residence life and housing is all of this very active engagement within the communities, but we are trying to figure out to what extent is that still wanted, and how do we meet students halfway, but at the same time, I would say, recognize how important it is in the world to interconnect with people. And if people are nervous or scared to do that, it's almost like it's like a tough love. We're like, come on, this is good for you, but it doesn't feel good for you right now. We know that because it's different, it's foreign to you. So we're spending a lot of time over the course of the summer and into next year to figure out how can we help with that situation.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think the saddest part of it all is just, I think one, people are more lonely. Like you can be alone and not lonely, but I think people are alone and lonely and not knowing how to address that or what would help address that is scary. And so that's probably, I think, the biggest thing is community development.
Yeah, during my time as a student and as a CA both, like that was during like 2021, 2022. It definitely felt like I definitely felt all those things that you mentioned. But to hear that I've been away for a year now, and to hear that they're still kind of going on at the same pace, or if not even a more exacerbated degree, that's kind of concerning. But that's why we're having conversations like these, right?
Mm-hmm.
As the director of student conduct, you work with students who might be facing disciplinary actions, and in your other roles, you're also involved with like a lot of new students. So, in light of the pandemic's impact on student well-being, have you observed any changes in patterns of student behavior, as well as any big picture or broader challenges that they might be facing, or rates or trends in mental health concerns among students?
I would say one of the biggest trends I've seen is that, and maybe predictably, given what I've just said, is that there are far fewer, well, parties, I would say, I guess I put it that way, in the residence halls. There's a lot less people coming together to celebrate whatever it may be in the residence halls. I think people are doing that off campus, but that's not really happening as much. But what is happening more is I'd say people are smoking indoors a lot more. So a lot of behavior that they might have done outdoors individually, that would be less likely to end up in my office because people are not leaving their room like they normally would. They're staying in their room. They're maybe covering a smoke detector because they want to smoke in their room and they don't want to have to go outside and interact with people. So that's happening a lot more than it ever has. People ask me a lot of questions because of the law regarding cannabis in the state of New York that changed over the last, what is it now, year and a half or year, which of course on college campuses, it doesn't change anything per se, but it is normalizing it more so than 10 years ago. If a student was referred to me for smoking marijuana in their room, it was such a taboo thing that they didn't even say the word marijuana. They'd be hesitant to talk about it.
Right.
Whereas now I can have much more transparent conversations with students because it is so normalized, and that's helpful for me in my approach to conduct, which is educational, learning and growing and decision making moving forward. That allows those conversations to hopefully be more productive. But a lot of it's and people are just I guess focused just on behavior that's more solitude in origin than social in origin, which in many cases makes the workload easier. Like I'm having less students referred to this office, but the issues themselves are a bit more dynamic in, I'd probably say, some mental health concerning behaviors. People being reported or referred to me for who get transported for intoxication. I usually, part of that process, I meet with them to check in and see how they're doing and what can we learn, what can you learn from that experience and not replicate that experience. And that's happening more, I guess, as well.
It's also like interesting that you brought up that although like the cases hitting your table are kind of less, but the problems are more dire and need more attention, kind of relate to mental health. So on a follow-up with that, what advice do you have for students who are struggling with mental wellness issues, whether that be like loneliness, burnout, feeling overwhelmed, all those college stressors?
Well, and there isn't a one-stop shop per se for all of those things. They're all very unique in their own, and each person's unique in their own. So it's hard to say. We want to try to cultivate like a really strong, robust community within the residence halls, and like say for community advocates or RAs at other campuses, they are great resources. And so to utilize your resources, whether that's your CA, whether that's your friends, your family, the counseling center on campus, depending on the circumstances, university police, a trusted advisor, faculty member. We are all here to support our students and help them find all of the successes they're looking for. I say that, but also, I guess the word I would use, or the phrase, is lean in. So I know some of those things can be scary to take that step to go seek out help. So just, we're seeking to meet students halfway, but it takes the other person to also lean in and trust that it's going to be okay. I think going back to the social development aspect, I can understand where it's uncomfortable to go to a floor program and try to meet all these new people you don't know, and you're still maybe struggling with meeting just a few people, let alone a big thing. But that could be the opportunity that happens, or comes about, that you meet your best friend for the next 10 years of your life, or for a lifetime. And so just to trust that you're capable. I think that's the other thing that I focus a lot in everything I do, even working with colleagues, is in my personal life, is empowerment, self-empowerment. We are all exceedingly capable beings, and it's getting to the point of trusting yourself and loving yourself, and being able to know that that step you take that may be kind of dark and you're not sure where you're going to end up could be the brightest thing you do. You just got to take that step.
Well, that's really valuable. It's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. That's pretty deep.
Sure.
All right. Next up, I know your hobbies include biking, skiing, reading, all activities that require a lot of focus, a lot of mental clarity. So how do you incorporate these events into your routine, make time for them? How are they helpful to you?
Well, growing up, I was predominantly like a team sport guy, and I enjoyed all of that. But I've learned in recent years, because I'm getting older, and now some of those sports, they're all contact sports. I played hockey, lacrosse, and football, and my body's just kind of telling me, chill out. You need to relax with those sports. I've gone to I played men's league for many years, but some people just don't want to. Some people are trying to relive it like, we're 18 again. And so I was like, all right, this is just too intense for me. And I, over the years, have become far less competitive. Like, I'm just not, that's not my scene. And so I focused on more natural activities. And for me, living in, the foothills of the Adirondacks, I like to be in the woods, I like to be outside, hear the world around me. And so all of those things I do are very much connected to nature and take place in nature. And so that to me is very healing and refreshing. And for the most part, like yesterday, I went on a long bike ride, and I'm training for a big event in a couple weeks. And so I never put headphones in or anything like that while I'm riding or doing anything, not because I'm worried about traffic or anything. I try to stick to the roads less traveled anyway, but I just like hearing the world, and it helps me focus in on my own internal thoughts. Like, sometimes when you're really having a tough time climbing a big hill, and this is maybe something that's a metaphor in some way, you listen to your own internal narrative and your struggle, like you're on the struggle bus, and you start, why am I doing this? This is stupid. I could just go home. I can call for a ride, something. And you realize you have some of these negative thought patterns that you need to work through. Because on the other side, again, trusting that, you're out here because you love doing this. You're out here because you like a challenge. You like to challenge yourself and push yourself. And it's not always going to be easy, but the growth that happens as a result is what's important. And, a lot of people say, who are hikers and anything else, it's like you get to the top, the summit of a mountain, the view makes it worth it. That's still reward based to me, which is nice, but I think all of us finding that inner drive and understanding as to what's the internal reward versus an external reward, because that external reward won't always be there, or at least be available when you'd like it to be there. Sometimes the hill's a lot longer than you thought it was. Like yesterday, my ride had like 4 false summits, if you will. And so I was like, oh, finally I'm at the top of this huge hill. And then nope. And then that happened 3 or 4 more times. And I watched how my demeanor would change every time I thought I was at the top, and then it wasn't. And so that can, if you just keep going until you're there. And I think it changes your perspective. I actually did that after the first couple fake summits, thinking just enjoy the ride. Just keep pedaling and enjoy the ride. Make the most out of your ride. Be great. Find the things you can be grateful for. And I started looking around at the beautiful scenery and listening to the birds and saying, that's why I'm here. Who cares if I'm climbing up the hill and it's really hard? It's a great experience.
In Colorado, like it's kind of the trend around here too, that people are constantly hiking and skiing on weekends. It's just everyone kind of loves nature, and that's how it is like within most communities that are here. So I'm sure a lot of our audience will resonate with that. And additionally, do you feel a sense of alignment with yourself when you're participating in these activities?
Oh, very much so. And a couple of people that I actually went, a former student of mine, former player of mine who went to SUNY Plattsburgh many years ago, right at the beginning of my career here. He now lives locally, works locally, works and part owner of a bike shop. So when I started getting into the bike world, he was my I guess you could say mentor. So the position kind of changed where I coached him and everything, and so he was teaching me how to ski and get into mountain biking. And I do all sorts of biking, but that was new to me, the mountain biking piece. But I've talked with him about how I think and he's I think said the same thing. These types of activities are more aligned with who I am than all the sports that I've done. Those were what I stepped into because they were available to me where I grew up, and there really wasn't too many mountains where I grew up. So the skiing and the biking wasn't a big scene. There wasn't much for bike shops or anything like that. I had an aunt, my mom's youngest sister, who was very big into all the stuff I'm into now. And so I always thought that was really cool, but it wasn't available. And so now that it is, it's kind of like, I wish I would have gotten into this forever ago, but that's not really my style either. Life is a journey, and you figure stuff out along the way.
Along the way. I
And
always say that.
I now am at a point where now I know those are the things I want to do, and those are things that I believe I can do for the rest of my life. And that's the plan.
Yeah. And I want our audience to know, like, especially young people like me, that, it's not always crystal clear, like when you have to do these things, or like when the thing that's going to be the thing that you want to do forever and the thing you love, like you're not always going to get it on the first try. So I want them to know, when did you kind of like put 2 and 2 together and we're like, oh, these are the things that I love doing and I kind of want to do them all the time?
Probably sometime in my mid 30s.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was still playing men's league hockey, men's league lacrosse, and up until that time. And I'd had some additional injuries through that time as well. I started going to different events, and even I was coaching through that time too here at Plattsburgh and coaching lacrosse. And I don't know, it just stopped resonating with me. A lot of those things, like I wasn't getting the same joy. I like to play. I like to play those sports, but not competitively. And again, I'm like, I'm not an effective coach because I don't have that coach mentality that I need for us to be successful. And I realized what I enjoyed most from those experiences was developing and working with and mentoring the students, the players, and helping them just be good humans. And I'm like, I don't need to be a lacrosse coach to do this. I can do this in other areas that I'm already doing at school, at where I work. And I said, this is also preventing me from the time I have to spend at the lacrosse field and then the coach's locker room and whatnot. I'm not able to bike or ski or anything like that. So once I started doing those things, I was certainly nervous about because I'd never done those before. I'm like, yeah, this is where I need to be. I often, when I'm talking with students, every student I meet with, I start off our meetings with getting to know them and find out why they choose SUNY Plattsburgh and what are they pursuing. And when people say, I'm not really sure what I want to do yet, I'll figure it out when I grow up or something like that. And I'm like, I still don't know what I want to do. I've just been following that next thing that I've found to be really interesting and something I think I can be good at and where I can help and be of service to people. And so my entire career has just been following opportunities that kind of come up, or I start trying, like this more recent thing with SOAR. That's something I've pursued personally, just that I want to do with only about 10 or 11 years left in my career. I want to start incorporating some other experiences. I mean, I've been doing student conduct here for 16 years. And if I keep doing that, that's great, but I want to do some other stuff. I'd rather be a jack of all trades instead of a master of one. So I like the diversity. I mean, that's the richness of life. And yeah, so I say to students, you don't need to know it all right now. I don't know. No one knows it all right now. So just follow your heart, follow your passions. If you're enjoying it, then it's probably resonating pretty well with you. And if not, then you have to explore within and find out what it is that's making it feel out of resonance. There could be lots of different things playing into that. So
Amazing. Well, a little bit about you being a jack of all trades. My next question is gonna connect to that, but you're also a circle coordinator for the Omicron Delta Kappa. Oh, sorry. You're also a circle coordinator for the Omicron Delta Kappa National Leadership Honor Society at SUNY Plattsburgh. So what do you believe are some key qualities of effective leaders?
well, what's okay. This is a little. There's some irony here, I think. My personal, and I even say professional approach to leadership, the topic of leadership, is more collaborative in nature and partnership development in nature. Because I'm very much rooted in like the concept of voluntarism, and so people working mutually agreeing to something and doing stuff collaboratively. And so what does that look like in a standard hierarchical leadership scenario is it doesn't really match up as much, which even in our organization, we have an e-board with different, positions. But the way we function is very much, we're all like at the same table in a circle and we identify what needs to be done and we work collectively and collaboratively to do whatever is needed. But to answer your question, I think organization is very important. I mean, people who are leaders have to be organized and have to understand all that needs to be done, and however the group gets to that place, because generally a leader suggests there are followers, and that's the other thing I've always struggled with, is in order for there to be a leader, there needs to be followers, and I want lots of leaders. I want everybody to be a self-empowered human being, all coming to the table or coming mutually together. So, but people need to be organized. Communication, I mean, that's something from my counseling background, I would, of course, be remiss if I didn't say that. So be a great communicator. And I'd say maybe stereotypically driven. I'd use that word, because a lot of times the way leadership is defined is kind of like the point of a wedge moving forward, to accomplish something. And so there needs to be often the driving force, but I also believe that the person who's kind of leading if you have a really good team, it's almost like another, I guess, a cycling example, where you have a pack that's going on a road and you're going against that headwind or whatever. And so the person in the front's doing a lot of work while everybody else is drafting that individual. And then there's opportunities for that front person who's pulling to peel off and allow the next person to kind of move up the line. And then that person who was leading goes to the back. So they take turns doing all the work. and allowing other people who are drafting, because it's easier when you're drafting, to get a break and kind of let the person pull them along, and then but everybody takes a chance doing that. And so I think also, a good leader knows when maybe they're really tired. That self-awareness maybe is where I'm going, to be able to step back and ask for help. It's not always the person who's the leader of the group to do everything. And so I always very much subscribe to the concept of many hands make light work, or it takes a village, another one. So I believe that the group should hopefully cohesively function, so where at any point in time, someone can step up, and whoever's the most capable or skilled at a certain thing, because we all have our strengths and weaknesses, and that way everybody gets a chance to shine. Everybody has their moment, and everybody else lifts that person up and supports them as they do that. I guess that would be my answer to that.
Yeah, that's really good. It just reminded me when I was in college, and when some of my first like leadership experiences and roles came through. One of the most difficult things to do at the time was to delegate, or to ask for help, or just do something with more than like myself or one other person, and get people involved. So it's a little ironic and funny that you also mentioned that the one of the keys to like good leadership and all of that is collaboration and community and people around you, which you wouldn't always think that's like the go-to answer when you're asked about leadership. You're like, oh, community and volunteerism. That's amazing.
I remember 2 years ago, the director of, or I think at the time assistant director, but now interim director of housing and community living, was doing a leadership summit as part of, I think, CA training, and asked if I would do a presentation, several presentations, 3 different sessions on leadership. And as I was putting everything together for it and trying to put something together that I also resonated with, I talked more about the collaborative approach to leadership. And I was like, I don't know how this is going to fly. I better ask and make sure he's okay with me kind of going off track and doing it my way. And thankfully he supported it. And I think I presume it was different than what people expected to hear when they came in. But again, I'm not going to do something that doesn't align with who I am. So.
How do you think sports can contribute to mental wellness, and what do you believe are the most important lessons that can be learned through sports?
I would say, first of all, I think just from a team perspective, and I'm speaking, of course, for team sports, which is most of my experience. I think teamwork is a huge thing, working collectively towards a common goal. I think, like, for example, not all students, like I came from a family with 3 younger brothers. My mom had a really big family. And so we were used to sometimes having give and take. You can't always have everything you want. You have to be able to make some concessions now and then and working together. And not everybody has that experience growing up. And so I think teamwork or playing on teams can help people learn those interpersonal skills. I think, well, in all my experiences, I had to do a lot of physical fitness as not only an aspect of the sports I play, but sometimes as a consequence for maybe not meeting certain expectations, if you will. I guess I'll put it that way, put it lightly, or having players do it too. And so I think from that perspective, the amount of physical exertion and sometimes even pushing yourself beyond perceived limits, that's another takeaway. I think would be a lifelong lesson. There's always a point you're going to get and you think, I can't do anymore. I can't do one more sprint. I can't do the next hill. And well, let's see, send it, give it a go. And so trying, and maybe you don't get it this time, but maybe you get it next time. And so moving it back to the tenacity and perseverance, that's another aspect that I think is critical and an aspect of playing sports. I think I talked about this, but winning and losing graciously. I started to really get to the point in my career as a coach and player is like, why am I here? is it for the wins? What is it for? And so some people, the wins are going to be very important, but at the end of the day, years down the road, is that really going to matter as much as maybe some of the experiences you had, the shared experiences, the shared victories, shared losses too. Some of those losses were really tough. You work hard for something and it doesn't go your way, even if everything was done right. Someone maybe could sprint a little faster than you, or just sometimes the ball or the puck or whatever it is just bounces their way or your way. And so I think that also helps people learn to deal with adversity. No matter how hard you play, it still may not go your way. And know that tomorrow is another day to practice and get better, and maybe tomorrow goes your way. So those are probably, shooting from the hip, some of the things that I can think of most. Camaraderie. I've already identified someone who is a former player that, and I have lots of former players and coaches that were still really close. And those relationships can last a lifetime as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. When I was, I'll admit, I was doing a little research for our interview and I stumbled across some of your most encouraging messages that you would leave for your players on Twitter and stuff like that over the
Oh,
years.
really?
Yeah, so that's awesome that you were so supportive to them.
You saw like my one Twitter post ever? I
Few of
can't
them.
I can't even think of a time I used Twitter. So that must have been pretty rare.
Yeah, it was pretty a while ago, but I was like, these are so encouraging. Like, I would want to hear these words from my coach, but it definitely made me think about like that encouraging aspect about it. And like now, when you mentioned that you guys didn't really used to win a lot of games and stuff like that, I just think about the type of headspace that you had to put them in, and just using your words of support to do that as well.
And I mean, that was ultimately what I realized I liked most was the and it sounds one way, but it really wasn't, but the developmental aspect, working with players to help them be, their best self on the field or best self as a human. And um, they helped me identify what I actually found to be most important about that relationship and to grow it as a coach. Because when I first started coaching, I pretty much was just a robot of the coaches I had, because I didn't know what I was doing. I was just, that's what I was taught. And so it takes a while to kind of find your own way and your own style. And I remember at one point, I'm like, why am I coaching like this? I didn't like being coached like this. Why am I? So I had to start learning how to coach my way. And yeah, and that's what you do.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that translates to like a lot of life as well. You just start doing things either the way your parents did them or like your old boss did them, but really those don't align with how you want to do things or like the results you want to see. So
Like
that's
a lot of people do what society expects versus finding out what works for you and what resonates with you and be that, which is what I want people to do.
yeah, that's a big lesson right there. All right. So what was the most rewarding aspect of coaching for you and why was that?
I loved watching, um, especially like students, they come in first year and they're new to college, they're new to this level of, say, lacrosse. And, for a lot of students, that was a pretty big jump from where they, played high school. Like where I played in high school, we were a hockey town. And so lacrosse was like my backup sport. But I was the right size and skill level coming out of high school to go right into college, where for hockey, especially with my position as a defenseman, that may never really transpire just because I'm too small, especially out of high school. So that was a big jump for me. So I liked helping and watching students get from like their first day freshman year on the field to where they ended up as a senior, and that growth and development. Again, I mean, I got my master's in counseling and human development, so that's something I'm very much interested in and helping, want to be a part of to the extent that I can, and people want me to. That growth is awesome. And then just watching people, and from when I first started here, the team culture was very different than I would say, than it was by the time I stopped coaching. And so watching that transformation from players and coaching staff go from, like, when I first got here, it seemed like my opinion of the program was very rowdy and kind of, I wouldn't say this is a compliment, but like a chip on the shoulder, and not really good at dealing with adversity. Like, everybody on the sideline when we were doing well were like rah rah rah, and then the moment something wasn't going our way, everybody was pouting, and their demeanor overall, just everything soured. And to me, that's not a recipe for success. That's not good. That's not healthy in life. And so over years and several different coaches, that changed. And it was, and by like the when I stopped coaching, a former assistant coach and someone I coached against, who was from another institution, became the head coach, and he was excellent guy, great coach. And he took the approach of not only being a good lacrosse program, but also developing good character of people. And that was really much aligned with who I am and what my focus was. So seeing that growth in the program even over that time, and unfortunately, from a coach's perspective, there is an aspect that you want to win your conference championship, for example. And for us, that always was going against SUNY Cortland, who has been like the best in the land forever. And we'd make it to the championship, and we'd often just lose by a lot. But I actually came out of retirement to help him out when he came back to the program as a head coach. And I thought that year we were going to maybe win it. And we came up just short. We lost. And then so I'm like, all right, I'm good. I'm tired. It's been 9 years. I've been coaching for like 15 years at that point. I'm like, I'm good. I'm going to officially retire. And of course, that next year, they won it. They beat they beat Cortland and won the SUNY championship for the first time in program history. And of course, I was stoked. I mean, I watched it online from home and was cheering from the couch. And the players who I all coached, it was so great seeing their success. But I was like, oh, I could have just waited one more year. I would have been there with them on the field. But again, it wasn't for me, it was for them. And so they did get what they wanted, and they've been working so hard for it. So yeah, it was cool. Like those memories, and just, so many zany things happen on bus trips, and that are just so much fun, and maybe a little frustrating at the time because players and students do wacky things. I've learned that certainly over my career. But it also makes some pretty good laughs when you're reminiscing about it.
Oh, that's amazing. Thank you for sharing that with us. That's pretty awesome. And I'll give you an opportunity before we close up to tell us a little bit about the pin you're wearing today on your shirt.
Oh yeah, can you see it?
Yeah.
So it's free hugs. So there's a lobster because someone associates me with I think, is it SpongeBob SquarePants or something like that? I'm not familiar, but it's Larry the Lobster. So one of the hall directors, Mason Barber, who oversees the programming advocates, one of them makes buttons. And so they've had some special made buttons for those of us who every Monday at noon, this semester, we started last semester, but we do free hugs. And so a group of us from different parts of campus who are all big into, bringing the love to campus and to our campus community. We stand over in the Andrew College Center. In fact, today, because the weather was so nice, we stood outside in the plaza out front of the College Center with a big sign that just says free hugs. Come, if you want one, come get one. There's 4 or 5 of us generally. So you can hug all of us. You can just pick the person you're most comfortable hugging. You can just give us a high five if you're not down with a hug, or send it, it's just send love. That's all we're doing, trying to spread love. And it's can be very healthy and therapeutic. Hugs in and of themselves have a very healing aspect to them. And my family, we're all very big huggers. And so when this opportunity came up, I said, heck yeah, I'll be there every Monday. So also running from there to here prior to our interview. So yeah, that's awesome. A good way to start the week, especially on Mondays. Mondays are normally like, oh, it's a Monday, but it makes it so we're, at the very least, the 5 of us are very stoked to get over there and spread the love.
Yeah, I'm sure the students are like stoked to see you too, especially after what we discussed earlier about isolation and all these things they've been feeling.
There was this one faculty member, I think last fall, I think it was the fall, who came around the corner and saw us and it was like in disbelief, like, is this legit? Is this real? I'm like, yeah, we're here for you. And might have been one of the best, biggest hugs. And I have a very high standard about a good hug. And so uh, one of the best hugs ever. And she said that she hadn't had a hug and she couldn't remember the last time she had a hug and how badly she needed one in her life. And it was just like she got brought to tears. She was just, and I'm like, that's why we do this every Monday. Even if we got one person, and that was, what, even if it's not that same experience, like today there was somebody, it was a great, like 30-second hug. Lindsay, it was with Lindsay, a student came over and it was like, they just really needed one today. And that's why we do it.
Yeah.
That's why
Even
we
if
do
it
it.
helps one person, that's all,
Yeah,
right? That's all we need.
awesome.
Absolutely. Well,
So.
thank you so much, Larry, for doing this interview with us. I want to give you an opportunity to say any closing remarks you have to our audience and wrap up.
Well, I'll just say thank you for tuning in, I guess, and listening. And I, I'm flabbergasted that you reached out to do this in the first place. I mean, I love the fact that we get to reconnect after you moved on to bigger and better things. And I'm um, proud of you and Z and what you're doing right now. I think it's absolutely amazing. Your website's, I've told you, beautiful. Like, oh, I've already showed Kathy, my wife, and there's certainly resources there that I think are going to be very helpful for people I know personally, that I'm sharing with. But I wish you all the best and just want to say thank you for this opportunity to connect.
That is our hope. Thank you so much, Larry, for giving us this opportunity to interview you and just sit down and, talk about all these important issues that I'm sure so many people are going to take so much away from. So thank you
I hope
so
so.
much.
Well, my pleasure.